Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Hi, this is Ross Berkeen. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I am delighted to have one of my favorite people here, Abra Stevens, and I want you to learn all about her and her book, Out Here in the Darkness. So welcome, Abra.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're delighted. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's very interesting about you that I want to make sure our listeners hear about is your background, because it's unique from a lot of the authors that I personally have interviewed, in that you really have some significant paralegal background, which is perfect for this particular book. How did you get into that?
Well, a few years, 2 decades ago, I answered an ad at an attorney's office for a receptionist, and 3 days later, I was his legal assistant, and I started learning and taking CLE classes, continuing legal education classes, and perfecting my craft.
And that makes it very interesting, because I know that you are really a Texas-based true crime author, and that is amazing because your stuff is real and scary real.
It is. The series that I'm doing now, the Detective Music series, will be 3 books, and all 3 crimes take place in Houston, Texas. And Detective Music worked in special crimes in Houston Police Department. So these are the cases that he worked. And that kind of helps to give the insight into what he was thinking at that time as he was going through the investigations.
So there are lots of crimes, unfortunately, in our world and in Texas. So why did you focus on the first crime that you did? Because that was no small task. The hours of research were like in the thousands.
Yes, just at 11,000 hours of research. So you had 18 people that are actually involved in these 3 crimes. So there was a lot to get into. And you also don't want the reader to be confused, because there are so many people doing so many things. I heard about this crime when I was in high school, and it just stayed with me my whole life.
So one of these haunting things, and I think that's part of what is so interesting about the cover behind you, is, there's a certain haunting quality about that cover that really lends itself well to this story. Did you create that cover, or who helped you with that, if anybody?
Jermaine Rogers. He is a poster artist outside of Houston. He lives in Houston, Texas, and he's been doing poster art since the 90s. Very good friend of mine. And I just knew I had to have him be a part of the project. What's interesting about this image is he had this in his mind. And then I called him and said, I need an image for my book. I'm going to send you a rough draft so you can get an idea of what the book is about. That's actually the image. It's in the center. There's a being of light that's being killed by shadowed figures. So it fits so well with the story. It was meant to be.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I can say I have personally read every page of this book, and it's as I mentioned to you at one point, it's not my typical genre. I'm much more into the fantasy and fictional stuff. But you can't make this kind of stuff up. This is some serious stuff. So in 11,000 hours of research that you did, which is a huge amount of time. You learned a lot of things. What kinds of things did you personally learn from this, other than you wanted to do a series?
You know, it actually had a significant impact in my life. Things that I wasn't even aware that I took for granted.
Yeah.
I now find enjoyment in it. When you delve that deeply into a murder and all the feelings and thoughts that are associated after the murder occurs, it makes you more mindful of what you have in your life and to appreciate each moment and every day. And that's really, I think, one of the most surprising parts about what the book did for me.
And I can see that. I mean, it's very, very powerful. So what's interesting about it is I know that you have the paralegal background. I know that you also have background in music journalism, I believe, and doing some other publications. But this has a lot of psychology in it. Is that something that you learned, or do you have some study in that as well?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. In college, I wanted to be a forensic psychologist. That's what I wanted to do. And so I took all the psychology classes. And then when I realized what was wrong with me, I moved on to something else I was interested in. So I have a lot of, I spent a long time studying psychiatry, psychology, and sociology.
Well, that's good. Now you can put it to practice. I mean, without necessarily being someone who sees patients all the time. Very, very interesting. So this was not your first attempt at writing. You made some other attempts at writing. And how did that go for you?
Well, so I decided that I was going to quit my corporate job and I was going to be a writer. And, I had this fantasy. It was going to be so easy and wonderful. And I'd written for music magazines for years. How hard could it be? Got about 50,000 words into a fantasy-based novel. And I couldn't even follow it. I just, it was not my best attempt at writing. So much prefer nonfiction.
So this little starter book that you did is somewhere on a shelf, and we'll have to uncover that one of these days and see what we can salvage from it.
That would be wonderful. I'll share it with you. You could. The concept was great. I just couldn't stick with it long enough.
So when you started this huge project and you put all this time in, I mean, you have a husband. I can see that maybe you didn't spend as much time with him as he wanted, but how supportive is he in these efforts for you?
He's incredibly supportive. Actually, it was my husband that brought up this case to write about. I was so frustrated, writing the fiction book, and I wanted to throw in the towel. And he said, "Why don't you write about that murder that you told me you heard about in high school?" And I said, "I'm sure somebody's written about it." Well, after a Google search, nobody had ever written about it. So it's thanks to him that this book was born.
So this book starts out one way and takes several directions on its own. Was that by design, or was that more how the information and the research carried you?
I think it would be how the research carried me. I followed the story. And I remember struggling with how I would present that to the reader, and finally coming up with I would present it as it happened and take them along with the characters in the story. They would be able to experience it as it happened, chronologically. What I was kind of surprised about was that each section kind of has a different voice. You know, I write in different voices depending on what I'm writing it, but I had never seen that as fully as I did with this book.
So I know that you've put this book together as a book. Is it something that you're also considering doing an Audible in, because those multiple voices would play in that, even as from a narration perspective?
I absolutely would like to do an Audible book with this story. I think that it would reach, you know, a lot more people. And sometimes it's easier to follow, you know, an Audible story as opposed to the printed word.
Did you find that there were characters that were not necessarily good people? Ugh, that's hard to make a judgment, but from one perspective, not necessarily good people. Did you find that you liked them or disliked them more or less based on your research? I mean, is there anybody you really liked in this? Detective. I mean, the detective did the best they could.
Yeah, Fawn Anderson in the story, I did not like her at all during my research. Once I started the interview process with her, I saw a different side of her, and I very much, you know, changed my opinion, rather than just having a blanketed opinion about her. I got to know her, and so it did affect my opinion. And then, of course, the police officers surprised me. In today's world, these police officers were so dedicated to their job, so dedicated to the citizens of Houston, Texas, and it was about justice for them. It wasn't about a quota. It wasn't about let's get a conviction. They really wanted the answers and the truth. And I have a lot of respect for the officers that worked on this case.
Yeah, finding the truth in this particular story is something that's really interesting. And we're at a point now where we're going to take a small break and we're going to listen to our sponsors. But when we come back, I want to continue a little bit about what you're going to do with the series and a little bit more about you. So stick around.
What started as a love letter to her son has become an international love letter for all parents to their children. Now you can read acclaimed author Shanalee Charbonneau's story to your children. When her son was very sick, she calmed him by singing her own song to him. She turned that song into the book, My Mama Loves Me, I'm Her Little Boy. She wrote 3 more magical books for all parents and kids 6 and under. Available at Indie Lecter, Amazon, and all local and national outlets.
Hello, I am the author and poet Denise Bryson. I am the author of The Things That Cross My Mind, Love's Reality, both in book and audio form. I am also noted as one of the best poets of 2011. I have 2 new projects coming up. One is the Blinky series, where Blinky tells us all about our coins and our bills for our children. I also have a book coming out called Say Ye. It's quotes from Denise Bryson, just inspirational and that will help you along the way.
Thank you for watching or listening to this show. Indie Lecter is proud to sponsor this programming. As a thank you for listening or watching, we would like to give you a 10% coupon code that you can use on our bookstore at indielecter.store. Use coupon code VIDEO19. Again, that's indielecter.store, coupon code VIDEO19 for a 10% discount on any purchase. Thank you.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow.
Thank you.
So I think in this segment, I would really like to kind of dig a little bit more down into how you put the book together, what kind of help you had while you were doing it, that kind of thing. So please share with us.
Well, I approached the story, the book, like I would a case. So I had to get all the records from the court. I had to get the police records. I had to get all the transcripts. And then the newspaper reports, and kind of put it all together. So even though I knew the answer, I knew the outcome, I instead threw that away and started like this was fresh. And then, you know, I'd see something in a police report and I would compare that to the testimony of a witness and go back and forth until I had a corroborated list of the various aspects of the crime and who had said what and who had done what. And then if I didn't have corroboration for something, it was only like in a testimony, but I didn't have corroboration from somewhere else. I put that off to the side. That was the majority of it, trying to work the case from the ground up, rather than taking what had happened and then just writing a book about that. And then my poor best friend Tammy had to read every single draft, chapter, sentence, line. You know, I said, oh, I changed one word in this paragraph. Can you read the whole thing again? So if anybody deserves, you know, a shout out, it's going to be Tammy.
Maybe dinner too, right? I mean, what the heck?
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
So to kind of help with the frame of reference, because it's a different approach than a lot of other stories, like a fictional story or something like that. What was the investigative time frame? So from the officers that were doing it, how long did they have to investigate the case? Because it was not like a day.
Yeah. Okay. So the officers, it's two different law enforcement agencies. So the Harris County Sheriff's Office found a body in the woods, and it was unidentified on August 14th. On September, and it was a cold case. They had no way to identify this young man. On September 7th, an informant reached out to an attorney who contacted the police and said that he had known about these crimes. And once that meeting occurred between the police officer and the informant, it was really about 5 days before everybody was in custody. So he's really the one that broke the case.
So that's awesome. Now it went to trial. And how long was the trial?
So they were all tried separately. About 5 days. The 5 days for the three that went to trial. One gave a guilty plea and was sentenced to 60 years, and the other one accepted a plea deal, and so he only had 20 years.
Still, it is a certain amount of justice that was achieved, so the officers were satisfied as much as possible with that, as was the family. The family was relieved? I'm
not sure. I reached out to the victim's family. They didn't want to participate, and I respect that decision. The other victim in the story, I couldn't find any of his relatives.
Okay, so this is a very interesting book. If you like true crime, this is one that will stand you on your ear and make you pay attention, partly because you really are a very vivid writer. It's very easy to see things for the words that you choose and the way you set things up. So how does that lead to the series? How did you get to, like, you're going to go to book 2 and book 3? 2 other cases.
Right. I'm actually pretty well into the first draft of the second book in the series. And Detective Music, you know, he talks about his cases, and this one is, it's fascinating, but what I'm most excited about is, whereas Out Here in the Darkness kind of follows the killers, my second book is going to be from a co-victim's point of view. And what I mean by co-victim is the daughter of one of the murder victims. And then also the wives and children of these homicide officers that work 24 hours a day nonstop. So you're going to get that kind of perspective from it as well.
So do you have a working title for book number 2 and an expected release date that you want to share?
The title is Still It Lingers.
Okay.
And I'm just hoping I can get the first draft to my editor by the end of October. We'll see.
That's pretty ambitious. Is this one the same amount of research time to get it to where you need it to be, or was it a little bit easier this time?
This one was easier in the research aspect of it. Although I'm going to talk about the crimes, I'm not really going to go into the trials as much. So it's not going to be that labor intensive as far as the documents that I'm going to need. The interviews that I've been conducting, those happen more quickly. It's easier to do those, and since we're going to be dealing with a lot of emotions and thoughts, I think that that's why this one has gone so much quicker than the first book.
So have you been out like doing book signings and talking to people and all of that on Out Here in the Darkness?
My first book signing is August 8th in Houston at Toasters on 1004 San Jacinto in downtown Houston. And it's going to be from 5 to 7, and we're going to have a discussion and then a book signing. And I have a couple of other things that I'm working on, but nothing concrete other than the signing in Houston next week.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, the police officers that are in the book are going to be at the book signing for the discussion and stuff. So that should be interesting.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very interesting perspective, and it actually brings up a really good point. You know, right now in our country, there's a lot of politics surrounding police and you know, the whole bit. Pulling the wives into part of the story and understanding the perspective, especially in book 2, is that going to help shed some different light on law enforcement?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if it's going to shed light on law enforcement as a whole, but it will shed a light on the law enforcement at that time. So, you know, things are different now. Detective work on shifts, whereas in the 70s and 80s, sometimes they didn't go home for 6 days because they're chasing killers. So it's a big difference between then and now. But that is kind of one of the motivations, is these were outstanding human beings who chose to risk their lives to protect other people, and I feel their stories need to be told.
That's very interesting. Okay, so we're going to take another short break and hear from our sponsors. When we come back, I want to talk about your website. I want to talk about where people can get the book and remind them about where you're going to be. So stick around.
What would you do if you had to put your life on hold to care for a loved one? I'm Charlotte Kenyon, award-winning author of the book, You Have to Laugh to Keep from Crying, How to Parent Your Parents. That was a question I had to ask myself some 16 years ago. and you'll have to ask the same question. I had a father-in-law with dementia, a mother with Alzheimer's, and a dad with Parkinson, all at the same time.
What would you do if you found out everyone on the town council were thieves and murderers? That's what happened in Bandera, Texas in 1873. John Cruder was the marshal, yet he needed to operate outside the law in order to balance the scales of justice. He is the Midnight Marauder. You can find his books on Amazon.com and TopWesterns.com in paperback, digital, and audio. I'm Roy Clinton, and I hope you'll read The Midnight Marauder.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
Hi, I'm Rox Berkey, and welcome back again for a little bit of information on my author, Abra Stevens, and Out Here in the Darkness, and it's been really fun so far. You know, I know you're doing a lot, working on the second book, trying to get a draft done by the end of October. I know you're busy. But you have a website you keep up with. And so what is your website?
It is www.abrastevens.com. ABRASTEVENS.
And so what can people see on there? What are you going to give people off that website? Because it's pretty cool, actually.
So what we're doing now is designing a reader's area. So when you sign up, you'll be given a password, and you'll be taken to the reader's area where you're going to see photos that weren't in the book. You're going to see actual documents, letters from the participants, interviews with some of the attorneys. There's also going to be a discussion area. A lot of feedback I've gotten after people read the book, they want to talk about it. Either they want to ask questions or they want to talk about how it made them feel. And I want to give that, I want to give some, readers a place to be able to do that.
Very cool. And so, your book is available. Where can people buy it?
Well, you can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it on Walmart.com, Barnes & Noble. If you want to support indie bookstores, it is at Bookwoman on Lamar in Austin, Texas. And, of course, it's in the Indie Lecture Store.
There you go. It's an Indie Lecture Store, and that we're glad for. So that's awesome. So there's lots of choices for people to be able to get it. A lot of times, though, people want to have a signed copy. So where are you going to be where people can go, oh, Abra, I want my signed copy, please?
I would love for them to do that. I am going to be in Houston, Texas on Thursday, August 8th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Toasters, and that is at 1004 San Jacinto in downtown Houston.
Awesome. And you're also going to be in Austin sometime soon, right?
I am. I'm going to be at the book convention in Austin. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Hey, it's what we do. What we do to help each other. And so there are opportunities where people can see you. Is there a calendar on your website where you're going to be in case people forget?
There is not, but there will be by tomorrow.
Sorry. Didn't mean Good.
I'm winging it. I appreciate it.
All right, so we have book 2. Book 3 is going to come right behind book 2.
Okay. Yes, it is.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to throw you under the bus. I promise I really wasn't. But
book three is actually going to be fun to write. Book 3 will see the return of Detective McAnulty, who is Detective Music's partner in Out Here in the Darkness. And those two had Shenanigans was their middle name, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Book 3 is going to be more fun.
Then we're going to have you back sometime. I would love to talk with you when you get that next one out. And unfortunately, we are out of time, but I totally appreciate you being here this evening, Abra. And please go out and get your copy of Out Here in the Darkness and post a review.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website at indiebeacon.com.